Hello, my name is Caitlin Henderson, and I'm one of the members of the Happy Day Elementary Data Team. Today we'll be going through our implementation of the DataWise process to help build an understanding of the Data-Informed Improvement Plan. Our staff here at Happy Day Elementary focuses on students and their learning. Our shared why is that at Happy Day Elementary we instill a collaborative culture illustrated by trust, respect, and a commitment to every student's learning. We've developed this statement to represent why we do what we do. Throughout our work, our team has made a commitment to utilize the ACE habits of mind, which entail a shared commitment in action, assessment and adjustment, intentional collaboration, and a relentless focus on evidence. To help guide the purpose of our work, we've also instilled a theory of action that helps drive the vision for our work in this process. Step 1 in the DataWise project is organizing for collaborative work. This step is broken down into 3 different areas: establishing structure, setting the tone, and taking stock. As a 3rd grade data team, we've established our structure for how our team will run by using the DataWise protocol. Improving of teaching and learning is the primary focus for building our team's foundation. This is evidence of our decided upon meeting times and organization of materials. And here we have illustrated our group norms, emphasizing our top 5, and these are norms that are shared and reviewed at the start of each meeting so that we can keep each other on track throughout. This diagram was created to illustrate the connections between the different teams at Happy Day Elementary. The arrows represent the two-way flow of information between the groups to achieve school improvement. And it's important to pay close attention to the connection between the teams, as it is necessary to ensure that everyone is involved in the improvement plan and work that needs to get done. Here's representation of our meetings, which will occur 2 times each month on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays via Zoom. And the process that we establish for setting the tone will show how we work together as a team. So when setting the tone, it's essential that we address the expectations for effective meetings, setting the norms for collaborative work, and acknowledging the work style preferences of each team member. Here's evidence of our meeting agenda, evidence of the roles within our group, evidence of acknowledging our work style preferences utilizing the Compass protocol. And here we're taking stock, in which we are looking at the current data that we have available at Happy Day Elementary. This data collection allows us to see areas of strength as well as areas that need focus or improvement. Here you can see initiatives to put in place with the school building in order to make those appropriate changes to increase our positive data points. And then the next few slides show evidence that we collected in our work to create and analyze our data points. So here we have evidence of instructional initiatives, external assessments, and internal assessments. As a team, what we did is we completed a reflection at the end of each step, addressing what worked well, along with changes that we would like to put in place for next time. Step 2 of the DataWise project focuses on building assessment literacy, and we're going to discuss how this step is utilized within Happy Day Elementary. This is important because building an assessment literate staff community is crucial for the fact that it helps to build staff's comfort levels with the data, and it helps unify all members involved with common language moving forward. So to start this process, we initiated it with a pre-assessment of teachers' assessment literacy, and from there we designed and implemented professional development and set expectations for responsible data use. To assess staff's knowledge, we first gave them this self-assessment to take prior to the PD, and based on those results and the observations of administrators, we conducted this PD crafted to those needs. And this table right here gives an idea of the terminology that teachers will see and hear in the PD, along with definitions and examples of the scores provided on assessment reports. In addition, we are going to teach staff about the drilling down process, which, as shown in this table, helps data teams identify data from a broader to more specific level. So an example of an activity aligned to those examples provided would be this one, in which teachers would be given sets of data and they would have to sort them based on those 5 levels using digital technology such as Nearpod or Desmo sorting. And then if there were staff that was interested in doing additional PD in terms of asynchronous work, here's a PD that provides specific categories of self-paced learning opportunities. One of the most fundamental components of data literacy is teaching responsible data use. So as part of their yearly district training, staff will take part in a webinar around responsible data use. And this will cover concepts such as how to identify student data, who student data can and cannot be shared with, and how to protect student data within the district. Here are our reflections after step 2 was initiated, addressing what worked well, and our changes for next time. Step 3 discusses creating a data overview with the use of graphic displays that engage school staff in productive discussions around the results of the given data. So here's a site overview. And then here's a sample of a subgroup population data. So this is determined or identifying gender. This is looking at gender, demographics, economically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities. This is a subgroup population of demographics. And this is looking at economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. And our process is to choose a focus area, analyze data to find a story, display the data, and allow staff members to make sense of the data so that they can come up with a priority question. This data right here was used to help us find our focus area. So this is the proficiency scores for our 3rd grade class on the English Language Arts Assessment. And this is that same data just for 4th grade. And as you can see in both graphs, the proficiency levels were substantially low for both grade levels. And here we have a more collective report looking at proficiency of 3rd and 4th grade students on the ELA exam. So we can see that 12% of 3rd graders are proficient in ELA, whereas 16% of 4th graders are proficient in ELA. So this crafted or led us to our focus area, which is ELA instruction, simply because it is evident based on the data that less than 25% of 3rd and 4th grade students are proficient in ELA. So our process for analyzing the data to find the story and display the data was we took some of that data and we reconstructed it. We then used that data and made it our mission to make sense of it. So to do this, we engaged in a think, pair, share, looked over state test questions so as to get a feel for the official exam, and then utilize the question formulation technique. So here's just an evidence of that think, pair, share along with an I notice, I wonder based on that reconstructed data, looking at proficiency levels for 3rd and 4th grade students on specific ELA strands. Here's another example. Here is an example looking at the number of state assessment questions over 2016, 2018, differentiating reading literature questions over reading informational text. And here we have a comparison of our students' performance to that of the regional BOCES performance levels. Here's evidence of past state test data in which we can see the types of questions, the standards being assessed, and percentage of students answering those questions correctly. And here is our question formulation technique, which really helped keep one another accountable. When doing this was referring to the ladder of inference, and that made sure that we were making observable data and experiences within those questions and not just forming them based on beliefs or opinions. So after committing to that, we were able to identify our priority question, which was how can students improve their reading comprehension within fictional texts. And from there, we constructed our plus delta reflection, again, looking at what went well and what changes we wanted to implement for next time. So step 4 is digging into student data. So our process here is to examine a wide range of student data, come to a shared understanding of what student data shows, and identify a learner-centered problem. We started with one data source, the 2017 fourth grade ELA exam. We expanded that to multiple data sources with a focus on student comprehension questions, and then participated in the drilling down technique while looking at both hard and soft data. As we dug into our data, we made sure that we were using the drilling down technique to ensure we utilize broad and specific data. And our aggregated data showed us that there was tremendous needs in third and fourth grade ELA, seeing as student proficiency results were so low. Our disaggregated data looked at literacy standards among specific subgroups and those mastery levels. And something that was brought to our attention was that reading literacy 4.2 seemed to be an area of deficit across the board. Our strand data showed that student performance with literature is remaining stagnant, whereas informational text is shifting from progressing to regressing and back to progressing, but continuing to remain below BOCES. When we went and did a deeper analysis of our data, we looked at the item level, and here we were able to look at student performance on multiple choice questions and short answer questions. And what we noticed is that students were scoring higher levels of mastery on multiple choice rather than short answer. So when we looked further at student work samples taken from previous exams, we noticed that students were struggling with their short answer responses that required making inferences using text details. So our learner-centered problem was that students are having difficulty making inferences with fictional text when responding to constructed response items. Here is our reflection of that work, detailing what went well, and then changes that we'd like to implement for next time. Step 5 of the process is where we spent our time examining instruction and looking to find the story around what is currently happening and why it isn't necessarily working. So our process for this was to examine a wide range of instructional data, clarify the purpose of observations, come to a shared understanding of what is happening in the classroom, and identify a problem of practice. As means of soft data, we provided both students and teachers a perception survey aligned to ELA instruction. And here you can see the alignment of those two surveys. And then we took part in an affinity mapping protocol to help categorize areas for why students struggle with making inferences. And based on the input from that, our observation told us that some of the primary reasons were time, ability, intentional practice, and the lack of vertical alignment. So based on that affinity protocol, we conducted the 5 whys using guiding questions above. And really the purpose of this was to continue to ask why questions to narrow into that problem of practice. We also wanted to make sure that we were referencing observation practices and the importance of that. So here is essentially the work that we did here on that piece. It's important that, to notice that we went over key elements of observing practices to develop a shared understanding of what practices look like across teachers' classrooms, while also generating ideas about what makes for effective instruction and effective practice. And then to help broaden our experiences with observations and effective practices, we turned to some internal and external resources. And then this was the recording template that our observers would use as they went into classrooms and how they would focus that around the learner-centered problem through the conducting an I Notice, I Wonder. So when we examined instruction in those observations, staff noticed that students were able to answer multiple lower level comprehension questions successfully. They were able to successfully identify text clues within fictional text, but not so able in applying that thinking to deeper connections. And they showed significantly lower achievement in higher order thinking questions such as critical thinking and creative problem solving. So as teachers, we found that we don't have a consistent process for explicitly teaching how to use key details and text clues to make inferences in fictional texts. And here is our plus delta reflection on that process. Moving on to step 6, after developing our problem of practice, we developed our action plan. And the purpose of this step was really to look for the change and more or less what we were going to do to change the instruction. So within this step, we felt that it was highly important to refer back to our theory of action so as to ensure that we developed an action plan that meets the identified needs. Our process for developing an action plan included that we clarify our focus, decide on instructional strategies, agree on what the plan will look like in the classroom, and put the plan in writing. To begin, we conducted an assessment of inference strategies, and together we ranked these strategies on the impact and feasibility to ensure that we were using a strategy that would have impact on student success but also build on teacher buy-in. And we found that scaffolding instruction on making inferences through the use of a graphic organizer was a strategy that worked best. So from there, we used the following table to help create a common vision for implementation, and this increased our team's capacity for ensuring that we would have targeted conversations around instruction. And then from this point, we developed our plan of action, which aligned to our theory of action and how we felt our strategy would support the current needs of our teachers and students. As demonstrated, we outlined the tasks with the plan, who would be responsible, and the time frame those tasks would be completed. As can be seen, our instructional strategy was that teachers would scaffold their instruction through the use of a common graphic organizer to support students in their ability to use text details to make inferences. Right here, this is just evidence of the common graphic organizer and scaffolding process that teachers would be using across the board to help address a problem. And then this is our reflection of what worked well and the changes that we would make within this step. So the final step that we committed to in this work was step 7, and this is basically the plan to assess progress, which is crucial because essentially a plan means nothing if your constituents do not adhere to it. So our plan to assess progress helped us ensure that our staff stay committed to the work with follow-ups to monitor areas of success and additional need. So our process was to choose common assessments that we would use to monitor progress, choose the time frame in which we would collect data, and then define student learning outcomes if we are successful with our strategy. So looking at the data progression over time, we started with our learner-centered problem. We brought that down to our problem of practice, and then our instructional strategy, which again refers to the scaffolding of instruction with the use of a common graphic organizer to support students making inferences. In assessing the progress of our plan with regards to students' learning, we wanted to ensure that we were utilizing means of short-term, medium, and long-term data. These monitoring tools, timeframes, and expected outcomes are summarized in the table above. This table illustrates short-term data, and since short-term assessments are constantly and continuously happening, they help make monitoring student data a regular part of the teacher's practice. So here you can see those expected outcomes in the far right column. This right here is medium-term data, which is incredibly useful for dissecting students' progress within a single school year and tracking a student's progress as the year goes on. So this is monitoring from the fall, growth through the winter, and then through the spring. And then this table illustrates the use of long-term data, which is fundamental in ensuring the school is meeting the needs of all their students. And it's important to remember that this is just one piece of data and that the short and medium-term data should be looked at in coherence with long-term data. And again, you can see the expected outcome over on the right-hand side. Here is our reflection of what worked well and changes that we would like to put in place for next time. And as a team, we've learned a great deal in our ability to use data to improve teaching and learning. And some of the major takeaways are the importance of protocols to help guide discussions, ensuring the implementation of an inquiry stance while remaining low on the ladder of influence, and recognizing that soft data is equally important in getting to the root cause of the problem. From my own perspective, I've learned so much about the DataWise process, and in the upcoming school year, I'm actually going to be taking on the role as a math interventionist for grades 3 through 5. in which a great deal of my position will be around utilizing data to enhance student learning. I feel like this process has really helped prepare me for my new position, but not only personal growth, it's really helped me develop as a leader so I can implement these strategies and this technique and process with the staff members that I'll be working with so that we can create change on a greater level.